Alienist takes us on a moral and dangerous journey into the seedy underbelly in New York, 1896.
TNT's Emmy Award-winning hit show, The Alienist, from novelist Caleb Carr, is set in an era when New York City was experiencing an influx of immigrants through Ellis Island and into the New World.
The Alienist shows diversity in a city that is trying to find its own identity.
While they were rebuilding their own lives, they were also building New York City's legendary landmarks like the Statue of Liberty and the Williamsburg Bridge. Today, New York City has reinvented itself many times over. The old streets hold clues to the past and the people who live there. But to film a television show in New York City that took place over a century ago, it's an almost impossible task.
I've never worked with a creative team that has been so open.
Yet, TNT assembled television and film's most talented craftspeople to make the impossible possible.
We are literally recreating the city.
I've never been on a production like this where I walk in and the show has been so heavily researched.
I got to scout New York for several weeks and really get to see what the world of New York was at that time period.
People went to great lengths to be historically correct.
4,300 miles away from New York City, in Budapest, Hungary, TNT rebuilt parts of the old world.
People don't make sets like this anymore. There's nothing quite like disappearing onto a set and not being able to see the edges of it. It really is mind-boggling.
While just over 1,000 miles away from Budapest, in London's Soho district, visual effects houses are digitally recreating the old world's streets, buildings, and bridges.
Just the amount of love and care that goes into creating these worlds. You know, I think it elevates what's on the page.
Pixel by pixel.
So every piece of visual information needs to somehow bolster whatever's happening emotionally with the characters, whatever is happening dramatically in the plot.
Doctor, do you not find it ironic that an immigrant child was left at the foot of Lady Liberty herself?
TNT hired 3 of the industry's leading visual effects houses, Peerless, One of Us, and Free Folk, to take on the challenge of digitally rebuilding 1896 New York.
Back in the day, there was a difference between TV and film. You know, TV for broadcast, there was a certain level of expectation because the budgets and the schedules demanded that. But now, there's no difference. We're producing at the highest end on everything that we do, and you have to.
On a show like this, your job is to make it invisible. Your job is to make something feel real, but the visual effects should not be in any way noticed.
That's why you can't leave the back door open.
Great thing about The Alienist is that we were creating a world, a really fantastic world, but it wasn't fantasy. It was a real world that had existed and had been very well recorded.
Each visual effects house has their own visual effects supervisor who collaborates with the show's producers and directors to find the most effective technique to film and build each visual effect.
They'll come with an original idea about how they want something to look or feel, and I'll try and kind of run with that with the team we have here to try and give ideas about how best to do that.
Jesus! That child never stopped bawling!
Well, it'd help if her father took her for once.
So the very first visual effects challenge we had on the show was creating this stunning establishing shot of New York City. And it was also our chance to sort of make a statement visually of what the show is and how it's going to feel in terms of the mixture of practical sets with visual effects, extensions and enhancements, and in some cases, full computer-generated shots. One of the reasons we found it particularly difficult is because there are certain things that make New York iconic, landmarks and such, and some of them didn't exist in 1896. So we had to sort of take advantage of what we did have, like the Brooklyn Bridge and like the Statue of Liberty. So you see an unmistakable New York City. We did many versions of that shot dating back to the earliest days of production. There was a version of the shot done, and then we went back in and redid it. And then we thought that that version was great. And then when we were a couple weeks away from delivering our first episode, I remember looking at our editor and another producer on the team, and we all kind of like silently agreed to each other that we could do better. And we went to our visual effects house, One of Us, and we sat down with their team, and to their credit, they didn't walk out of the room when we said, in an insane manner, you know what, let's just make an entirely new shot again.
They came with us with the idea of, okay, can we have a a shot that looks like Gangs of New York, but isn't Gangs of New York. It needs to instantly sell New York at that time. You need to think New York as soon as you see it, but it's not very long, it's only like 150 frames, right? So you haven't got a long time to track around New York and go, hey, look what we're doing. You've got like, 3 seconds to kind of go, New York. Everything was CG. We built everything from scratch. We built the water, we bought models of the Statue of Liberty. We kind of like built the whole of New York from scratch.
We took the liberty of rotate the statue a little bit just to make it fit better in the shots.
In order to kind of sell this a bit more beautiful, we've kind of clocked around about 30 degrees, so she's looking at New York a bit more.
Well, I don't know that there's anything more iconic in American history and American iconography than the Statue of Liberty.
The Statue of Liberty, originally known as Liberty Enlightening the World, was a gift of friendship from the people of France, celebrating the 100-year anniversary of America's Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty is a very, very complicated model. It's an amazingly detailed statue when you get close to it. The odd thing is that if you film it, you see that detail. The face of the statue is quite interesting because it's oddly masculine, and when you start looking at the face, you feel it's appropriate to make it a little bit more feminine, which we did.
Our vendors had to do a little bit of research alongside with us to see what she did look like at that point in time.
There's also sort of the natural process of what happens to copper, which gets oxidized, and as that happens, the color changes. So whereas the original statue was delivered and may have looked like a bright, shiny penny, eventually it starts to kind of take a greenish color. And what we have to sort of figure out is, okay, well, how much at that point had it happened? There wasn't any amount of color photography that we could refer to. So we had to sort of piece things together from the research that did exist.
There were a lot of tests done to get the look just right.
The opening sequence of The Alienist takes place down at Williamsburg Bridge, which is just being constructed.
We can only build so much set, so the bridge has to be extended. And because there's so much camera movement, we decided to build the complete Williamsburg Bridge in the computer. And it gives you the ability to put the camera anywhere you like, and you can have a background for it. So it was a very, very complicated model. Every rivet, every piece of wood, every cable, it's all been modeled. The burlap that protects the catwalk, that was practical on the set itself, and then on the computer graphics model, that's a simulation.
There was a lot of scaffolding, a lot of structure that needed to be built, and we had a lot of reference for that, so we took those reference images and then started building it in. And because we were shooting on the bridge, there was a live set that was going to be used for all the live action stuff. We had to match to that.
Mara decided to build it quite elevated so that when the actors were up there, they were a bit scared. And some of them do have vertigo and were quite scared, especially on the nights when it was windy and it was shaking around a bit. It was a great idea. I mean, if you'd built it closer to the ground, it would have looked the same, but I don't think you would have had the feeling of peril that it does come across when Moore's up there and he's sketching the body, and that platform that he's on is actually moving, literally waving around, and he's many meters off the ground.
You know this child?
I do. Giorgio Santorelli. He's a boy whore worked out of Priestess Hall. It was known as Gloria there, though.
Why must you call him it?
What else you call a degenerate who dresses himself as a girl for the pleasure of grown men?
And then, of course, we go back to Connor chasing Van Bergen up the bridge, and again, we revisit, and we're able to use a lot of that asset. And when they're running up the bridge, you actually see the set, and then through it, you see the CG asset that we built. And of course, you then have the option again to put the camera wherever you like. So right at the end, when he's standing there and he doesn't know where to go because he's run out of catwalk.
You feel the danger of him coming to the end of the road, literally and figuratively. It's just, that's where he was.
You'll pay for this. You hang.
And then, of course, there's the shot where we see his body being thrown into the water. And again, it's all completely computer generated.
You know, we've all kind of entertainment here, friend. A little pleasure. A little pain.
The Bowery was definitely our biggest sequence. We realized pretty early on we had a lot of shots that covered this one location. So instead of approaching each shot individually, we decided to build one massive CG environment that would cover them all.
New York City's oldest thoroughfare, the Bowery, was once all farmland. But by the early 1800s, the population grew, and it became one of the city's most prominent streets, with mansions, shops, theaters, and banks. However, during the Civil War, the Bowery was overcome with lowbrow brothels and flop houses. Seen as the slums through the turn of the century, the area was often labeled Skid Row, until the 1990s when a wave of gentrification restored the Lower East Side to its previous glory.
Move your fatties now, girls. We open for business in less than an hour.
We started with the LiDAR scan, which we got from set, kind of accurately showed us what was shot, scale, size, and from there we were able to lay out our buildings at either side of it and a couple of streets back. There's one particular shot which has a train coming through on train tracks, and the camera cranes quite high up. We see a few streets back, and then Williamsburg Bridge in the background. We then took in all the camera data, and once we started receiving plates, we lined up all our cameras and then decided which buildings needed to have the most attention to them in terms of shaders and textures, and then which ones were maybe a step back from that and needed a little less. We treated in a modular setup, and we had these buildings. It's like building blocks that you could say, oh, can I have 1 floor, 2 floor, what type of roof, what type of windows. That enabled us to quickly lay it out almost in a procedural sort of way and then go back and just tweak them.
There's been another one.
What is this place?
It's the old immigration station. They're turning it into an aquarium.
The really big, epic visual effects of the show involve huge moments for our characters in the story. So we have Castle Garden, where our team is actually investigating a new murder.
Originally known as Castle Clinton or Fort Clinton, Castle Garden was America's first official immigration center until Ellis Island opened in 1892.
So we wanted to stay true as much as possible, but also we had to make allowance with the actual location that we had. When the carriages are approaching, the base of that is all real, and then we extended the left-hand side of frame and then added the top of it. And it's really that top bit that makes it kind of recognizable for historians.
I can feel serrations on the zygomatic bone around both eyes, as well as the supraorbital ridge. Identical to what we found with the Zweig boy.
Probably used the same knife to take the eyes of both boys.
Same-handed work.
Careful where you step.
We had to shoot at a fairly fast pace, and a lot of the time we were shooting on location. There are times when you just have to make compromises on the day in the knowledge that you're going to take care of things later on.
Those compromises are addressed by using several visual effects techniques. One, scene extensions.
Over there.
Though vast, the Alienist set still had its limitations. Scene extensions were used to allow filmmakers to composite a digital painting into a blue screen, to give the illusion that the environment is larger than it really is.
I can tell by the expression on your face you were as successful as I was.
When you want to see a vista of New York from 1896, or when you want to see kind of all the way down the streets, down Fifth Avenue or Broadway, you can't do that without visual effects. So basically, we can create bits of New York and put that behind the set. So there'll be the first 15 to 30 foot will be real set, and then behind that, everything else is completely CGI. The visual effects department on set will often abuse the extras and make them walk up and down 3 million times in different clothes against different backgrounds and make them do different actions. And so you might have seen them here, but they'll also be like there 15 times in the background. Once we light them, we texture them, we kind of put clothes on them, put them in there, give them shadows, and then we spend a ridiculous amount of time making that look real.
Another is creating elements that didn't exist, or simply don't exist anymore.
The art department built a very nice ferry landing, and then we constructed a CG ferry.
You Miss Howard? Yes.
I'm Eliza. Mrs. Kirkpatrick sent me to fetch you?
From the boarding house.
Yes, miss. Let me take your bag.
We created it based on a real ferry, the Mary Powell, that did routes up and down the Hudson.
The boat itself took 2 guys a month to build, and before they started that, we naturally did lots of research, tried to get as many images as we could, but we probably spent almost as much time on the water. With the water simulation, we had a water specialist, so there wasn't a lot of agitation in this water, but because you actually deal in real-world values when you're doing these simulations, we had to try lots of little cheats, the pre-roll for it, so everything that you actually generate before even the beginning of the shot, that was 10 seconds in order to get this massive foaming water. It took a few iterations to get it right, but we're really pleased with it.
What was his name? The one with the silver smile.
One of our suspects, Van Bergen, has been identified because he has silver teeth, and the silver is apparently a result of mercury treatment for syphilis.
They were a little bit hard because we didn't have any real reference to go off of.
We kind of had a bit of a struggle getting the right level of silver because too shiny and he looks like Jaws from the James Bond film, and not shiny enough, you don't really get it. I think they're just dirty. So we actually did a lot of tests to get just the right look. So they looked silvery, but didn't look like they were chrome.
Which one of you is up for a little fun?
I think we ended up having a happy kind of balance of it being noticeable to the boys, but not so much that they were freaked out that they wouldn't go with him again. It's that whole trust thing, you know? Don't know how they trusted him anyway, even if his teeth were regular. But I think we found that happy kind of sweet spot where they know he's off, but he's got money, so they're gonna go with him and see what happens.
You're mine now. Begging your pardon.
So there's a scene with Connor and Sarah.
Eyelash.
Where he's being intimidating and he's using an eyelash on the edge of his finger to do this. There's 2 shots to it. There's one where you see it on his finger with Connor's face behind it, and that was really sharp and looked like a barbed wire or something. It looked quite menacing. And that was relatively easy to do. And as soon as it was comped, you thought, yeah, that looks perfect. So the reverse shot was actually a trickier shot for us. On top of that, we had to try and get a play of light on it. In order to achieve this, we actually had to do it at 4K, put the play of light on it, do the defocusing, and then reduce it back down to the final size. And that was the only way we could actually get the comp.
Go on, blow. Bring your look.
It may have been the tiniest comp in history. For the weathering of Dr. Kreiser's arm, we actually tracked a mesh, which we then used to deform it. Then we added a kind of leathery texture to it to just give a sense of the withering as well.
You have to basically create spare fabric and have it moving and shadowed properly. Of course, Daniel Brühl's actually quite muscular. His biceps in particular are fairly impressive, so we had a number of shots where we actually had to shrink his arm inside his shirt.
Afraid I've ruined it.
In The Alienist is, of course, character drama, tension in terms of the murder mystery story and investigation. So whenever we get a chance to get outside and have anything close to sort of an action scene, we really want to try to make it count. In episode 8, when the Swede is following Chrysler and Moore and shoots at them, we had a nice opportunity to bring a little action to The Alienist, which was really fun. We took the practical footage, which David Petrarca, director of that episode, had shot, and we worked with it with our friends at Peerless, and Kent, our visual effects supervisor, sort of had the vision for what would happen in terms of the animation.
We looked at the idea of doing everything CG, like CG horses, but we just felt that was a bit of a challenge. So we shot the elements basically on the same mountain road on a bridge that we redesigned a bit in the computer. But the horses are real, and on the day they're towing actually a little chariot being driven by a horse master. who has won lots of awards for precision carriage driving. So he positioned the horses and this little chariot exactly the way we wanted it. And he's removed in post the chariot, and then the CG carriages added back in.
It ended up being a very fun sequence, even though it took quite a bit of work to try to get it right, because whenever you have animator working on something in a computer, it never quite behaves initially the way it does in nature. And it's always the sort of small, fine details that ends up selling it. And it's weird because more often than not, on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth tries, you notice little tiny things by going frame by frame that aren't exactly behaving the way they would in nature. And when you notice that, you don't see them the same way when you see the shot played at speed, but it does in your mind. It goes like, something's not right with that. I don't know what it is. You go frame by frame, you find the thing, you make the adjustment, and suddenly it's like, oh yeah, that looks real.
What kind of devil could do such a thing?
Had a rather unfortunate appearance.
You mean he had a disfigurement?
A facial spasm of some kind.
In the later episodes of the show, we have several characters starting to tell our heroes that the killer, Beecham, has this very unique and disturbing facial spasm or facial twitch. By far, that was the biggest visual effects challenge we had on the show.
He's here. He's real.
The actor was very good. He worked very hard at doing some pretty strange things with his face, but it just wasn't quite enough.
Nothing against, him at all as an actor, but it's quite a specific thing that everybody was after.
He wanted the whole lip to kind of curl up in a kind of spasm. So as well as the spasms going on in the face, he actually wanted it to, whenever that happened, to kind of like stretch his face.
We found some very interesting footage of a muscle spasm from somebody just been working out.
And his whole leg was twitching away, firing. You could see the tendons moving like that. And I said, well, do you want this to happen on his face?
The trick of it was finding that balance where it needs to be scary, it needs to be disturbing, but it also has to feel real and like it could have happened to someone. And it took to the very last day of us working on the show to get to where we ended up. But we were all really happy with it, and hopefully people at home aren't happy but really scared of it.
Where do you think you're going?
What I really liked about this series was the fact it was very cinematic.
The production level of the show is just so high.
Okay, let's do it again. The end product on this show has been beautiful because we've all worked together.
It actually takes armies of people working all together, being collaborative and respecting and valuing each other's opinions and ideas. We are able to make the strongest show.
To me, it was like summer camp, where you're all kind of thrown into this and you got to see who you're going to make friends with. And you make some really amazing friends.
Regardless of the difficulties and personal misfortunes, the past 4 months have proved to be more than a fruitful partnership. I dare say what we now share is friendship.
Then a toast to friendship.
To friendship.
Friendship.
Friendship.